My name is Oorvi Sharma, and I'm a practicing architect. I practice in the diverse geographies of the Western Canadian region, the MENA region, more specifically the United Arab Emirates, and the Indian Himalayan region. My practice is supported by the work that I do researching these contexts, exhibiting the work that I produce from this research, and in tandem I write. I'm currently developing a book titled Negotiating Data, which dives into coastal contexts and the need for evolved vocabularies in light of rising sea levels. My work can be founded in two fields. One is that of architecture as a social act, and on the other hand, a regard for interdisciplinarity and also the freedom to access a trans-scalar approach to work. That was the benefit that I derived from my graduate studies at the Harvard University Graduate School of Design. The themes that I pursue in Mao are very much a product of the experience I've had working in diverse regions from cities in North America like Boston and San Francisco. Another experience that has been vastly foundational to the way that I work, the time that I spent living and working in Tokyo, Japan. And I think to ground it really is the time I've spent in Abu Dhabi, which is the city that I grew up. So in the consideration of architecture as a social act are fundamentally two things. And one is equity, and the other is a recognition that our acts have consequence. Going in through that lens that looked at ecologies that are existing in material worlds that we haven't yet influenced or intervened, and looking at how you can transmute or transfigure. For example, in my work now, I give a lot of regard to this idea of designing to dismantle, considering the embodied carbon within existing buildings. What's best is to not build. But that isn't necessarily a solution for a lot of contexts that maybe are developing. So my paradigm is really colored by the view of how, as actors in the everyday life of our cities, not only are we constituents or contributors, but we're also complicit in the creation of the city. It's inconceivable to think of architecture without considering contemporary energy paradigms and the value systems that come from it. Beginning to work on these relationships and also looking back at our existing building stock and renegotiating those relationships and retooling those programs so that as we move forward, we're able to do so in a world that is markedly better or healthier than it ever has been before. This is also pertinent to my work in Abu Dhabi, a project called Indigenous Imperatives, that studies the modern heritage in the cities. For example, it looks at buildings from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, which have ideas of living that are so vividly different. The proscenium is the sliver of the stage that's audience-facing and isn't yet the audience's, but is still the stage. And so that is a space I believe constitutes a semi-private realm. Proscenium acts as a project through which I document the lobbies of Abu Dhabi. So Abu Dhabi is in a unique metropolitan context in that there are individual lots, independent lots of a certain size within super blocks that were extruded to have a vertical language. Now, on the horizontal plane, it's a fascinating collage of individual tastes on a collective city as a whole. And my practice, it goes between imagining speculative visions for an urban realm. For example, the coastal edge. At the same time, if you think of, potentially an arid landscape, 32% of the Earth's crust is covered by natural landscapes that are either arid or semi-arid. And in this position, it becomes interesting to think about how we grow. And that itself is a speculative project that I've worked on. Negotiating data, it began as a written project with the hope of informing policy making, policy writing, and legislation. And in particular, the different ways in which coastal cities, coastal towns respond to rising sea levels. An overarching concept that is a product of the research is that these contexts, their architecture is inextricably linked to their landscape and to their urbanism. Any change that can be proposed must work with the different systems that are already at play. I've been working on a project in the Indian Himalayan region at a very high altitude. The project has been formulated specifically with the arid landscape, the need for a mode of growing that is optimized considering it is a resource-strapped region. It's designed with a repetition of 5 elements that are prefabricated. This is an important process because there is a scarcity also of local labor, of skill, know-how. So to be able to take these resources and also pick it up and move it elsewhere, or also to look at it as an idea that can be propagated in several regions. The tapestries that I've been producing, they're drawn from the ukiyo-e, woodblock prints, communicating for the dissemination of ideas. The elements, the drawings are there to be diffused into the region. While there is a need for local solutions and localized thinking, there is a real need for global exchange of speculative ideas in designing localized taxonomies of building, of constructing, of designing, of thinking. It's that virtue of going back to architecture as a social act and going back to the virtues of designing for dignity.